So welcome everybody. This is the Future of OD&C meeting with the key stakeholder champions from the OD&C division board for the Academy of Management. And what we're talking about today, and I wanted to preface this, and I'd like to do a check-in, and then we have lots to talk about. But if we could each just take a minute, there might be a concrete thing in this starting point, but there is a really important essence question that I have here for us. Um, I think this might be the first time that we're having a conversation about what it will take to truly elevate the field in a way that hasn't been done before. And in a way that, in Bill Passmore's words, when I talked with him, because we had a really nice chat, you know, moving from a philosophical, circuitous conversation about OD to an actual developmental building of the field conversation and the role that the division can play in that. And so I think that today is my conversation with you all is really about us putting in place what's going to be necessary to change the world through OD&C. And I really believe that in my experience, I'll just say the last piece, and I just welcome you all just checking in real quick about kind of your thought on how we can elevate the field through the division of OD&C and the Academy of Management, what role it can play. I'd really like to hear your thought on that because that's the purpose of the conversation today. I will say that, and we all have been in multiple conversations and experiences where we've talked about the field. One of the things has been there's been a big pushback on, do we professionalize it? Big pushback on, do we define it? Big pushback on, do we have some accountability in what we do as a field? Do we how do we elevate the research profile and really push the research profile in the work that's being done? Those kinds of things. So I think that what my request of you all is that I think, and my experience has been that I've been to OD Network, I've been to ISODC, I've been to IOTA, I've been in all of these different conversations. The one thing that they all have in common is the practitioner perspective. But I haven't seen a real intentional push for how do we advance the field from the academy, other than the conversations that I heard that went when OD division was moved to OD&C in the early 90s. And then the conversations about Lewin, Lippitt, and then Passmore and those, and all the early work that was done that led to the building of the division, which had like a huge impact on the field. So I want to stop there and just say, what role, what are your reactions to what we've done so far? Just a little check-in, but really move us in the direction of the question that I sent out in the email, which is what is the role that the division of the academy, what is the role of it in this type of an initiative where we are really trying to, our intention is to elevate the field in a way that has never been done before. That would be how I would frame it. You can reframe what you think should happen. But would anybody like to start and then pick someone else to go? And then let's just check in around that. And then we'll come back to the question about the scope of the initiative and what we need to do. Would anybody like to go first?
Steve, I'll go first. It's good to see everyone. It's lovely to see. Just to say, I'm a bit under the weather today, so apologies if I sneeze in your face. I'll try not to. Steve, I've been part of the meetings of this great initiative that you've been running. I've not been able to attend all, but I've attended most. I didn't attend the last one, and so it seems that there's been a major shift in focus from doctoral education to a bluer sky, wider range focus for this work. And so I, for one, would welcome you saying just a few words about that, maybe to get some of us reoriented. For me, that would be quite helpful.
So I'll just, what I'll do, and then I think others can speak to that because they have been a part of the last two meetings, some people here. So if you could speak that to help Patrice also see this, but essentially at the PDW, people start asking the question about, well, how can we plan for the future doctoral education without really understanding where the field is going? And there was this real sense of wanting to have a more concrete answer to the question, a more pragmatic answer to the question. And then that moved into the meeting that subsequent to that, where people were saying, well, we really need to do that. And the question became well, then how do we do that? And then the point was, well, maybe the doctoral initiative is one of the projects within a scope of projects, a set of projects that are aimed at elevating the field of OD&C and moving it to the next level. You might say professionalizing the field, because there's been a big debate about, do we professionalize the field, and those kinds of things, which fits into that one of the projects even. So at the last meeting, we then said, what do you all think? And there's probably about 15 people, I think, and it's recorded and you can see it on the site to go back to it there, and you can kind of go through and see, but there might have been 15 to 20 people, I think. But in that, it was a unanimous, we said, what do you all think? Pros and cons of this? What do we do? And unanimously, everybody basically voted and said, and it was unanimous. It wasn't like somewhat, it was like, we need to move the scope of this to defining the future of the field, or not defining the field, but really focusing on a strategy for the future of the field with very specific initiatives that will support that strategy for the future of the field.
Thank you. Thanks.
So today is about, well, okay, with that being said, what role does the division at the Academy play in this initiative, and what role does the board play? So the next conversation was, well, it can't be a OD&C division owned it needs to be a more, it needs to be collaborative across several organizations and institutions, and create more of an institutional, or like I said, like the UN, for OD&C, engaging different institutions and organizations as a collaborative effort to build it. My feeling has always been that the division, I think, needs to play an instrumental leadership role in that. So that's right. Does that answer the question for you?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Can someone else go next and check in on that? And I think if we go another 10 minutes in this conversation, checking in, or 15, then we need to move into kind of what's the specific role, and then we'll move to some action items. I want to make sure you know that we're going to make sure we finish with action and how we're going to move forward concretely, so you all know that. So who would like to go next? Or pick someone to go next if you want, Patrice.
I'll pick Ignacio.
Hi, Patrice. Hi, everyone. Well, I was not able to participate in the last meetings, so I'm not really updated about the latest discussions. But what I observed in my previous participation was that I think one issue for me is how to, I think in terms of doctoral education, how to maybe create a good link between strong research and practice. I think that's is an area where I think doctoral education should move forward. And I'm not sure if maybe you can tell us about it, Stephen, based on the research that you did. But today it seems that there are some programs that are more focused on practice, other programs that are more focused on research. And I think a link between these two worlds will be very nice to have, and maybe the division can play a role on making that link, as right. I think we have already worked on that area. And right. For the field, in general, I think what I have observed, but this is mostly from my interaction with companies, is that I have observed, at least in Chile, that change management as a field has been, people now know more about change management as a discipline. There is probably like a competency that is required for many executives, linked, even like high-level executives linked to strategy, that it was not common before. I would say like 10 or 15 years ago, it was not common, at least here in Chile. But I have observed also that organization development as a term is not well understood, and there are many different kind of initiative that falls into that like area of knowledge or discipline, like from human resource management practices to organizational change. So I think if we want to like play a role in terms of moving the discipline of OD&C forward, I think could be probably necessary to clarify some terms and maybe define like some concepts or key areas of focus for people who practice those disciplines. So because for people, for example, who are part of I don't know, practice or academic circles related to OD&C, they probably have the same conception that we have. But for people who work in organizations, I think there is a gap between what we think OD&C is and how they perceive this discipline applied into practice. So
yeah, that's really good. Let me that's good. Let me give you a couple pieces of thoughts. So what we're talking about at this point is stepping back. You just where you're in is you're in the, not the weeds, but you're kind of getting into the weeds of what do we need to do to elevate the field. What we're looking at here is stepping back and building an actual strategy for the future, building the future of the field, or the future of the field that steps back. And so if you go into the chat, you'll see in the chat the link to the strategy document. When you look at page 4 and page 5, we should be able to create a 2-page statement that moves from conceptual ideas on page 4, the conceptual strategy, to the objective or concrete strategy of what are the specific, what I would call major projects or programs we're going to pursue to elevate the field. You just began to touch base on some very important projects that we need to do. And those projects, will have an impact on measures that will measure how our field is doing. So we're looking at a field level, global impact, interdisciplinary. Page 5 really gets at that. Page 4 is saying, well, what is our strategic focus? And basically we're focusing on 4 questions, which is what's our aspiration, the vision, the mission, the goals, and the principles, which are our strategy, kind of our guiding strategy for what we're focused on doing. We get that cleaned up, and we then make sure on the next page that we have 7 potential major projects that if we accomplish them, they will help us achieve the goals and the vision and mission. And we want to accomplish it by adhering to principles, our core values of how we want to treat each other and do the work. And then the measures are below, and it's just a starting point of things that would tell us that we are elevating the field and we're actually achieving that mission and vision, and achieving those goals. So you are getting into some of the project elements, and you can go ahead and put your points in here. You can go ahead and highlight, hit enter, like you look at seed number 1 there, look at project number 1, you hit enter, tab, start putting some points in that you want to see happen. If you think there's a whole new project, name the project and start labeling. We are in that collaborative kind of ideation space around creating some identified project. Then you can go up above and you can look at the goals. Again, I love Rokeach. He's old and one of my favorites, which is just simply instrumental and terminal values. Terminal values are end states or goals, is the way I think about them. What, at the end of the day, what do we want to see be the results of our work? And then the next higher level on the ladder of abstraction, I use the concept of ladder of abstraction, is that if we achieve all those goals, what's different in the world? That's the vision. And the mission is the thing that we do that helps us to achieve that mission as a field. It's not, it has elements, the mission will have elements of what is OD&C in it, but it's really what are we trying to accomplish as a field, as a field of OD&C. So that's what's our mission as a field, which does have elements of what is OD&C in it, but it's a little bit different than the definition of the field. I'll stop there. I hope I'm helping. I'm just trying to level set for all of us. Anybody else? Can someone else go next that would be willing to chime in?
I'll go, and I'm still working through what you just said, Steve. I think for me, it's what Ignacio said. I think we have a problem with the word field and what we're calling and how it's defined as a field. I currently see 3 important fields: OD, change management, as Ignacio said, and even strategic management. And as a chair of the division and having conversations with Patrice and Michael and even David, for the division, we need to define our space. OD is easy to define, I think, within the academy. Change management is throughout the divisions in the academy. And how do we get that back and sort of claim ownership to that in relation to strategic management and even OB and OT from, the theoretical underpinnings. Mm-hmm. And what you're talking about, we can't lose sight of the practice too, and all that. So I guess I'm having trouble with, going back and then forward and all that. But I think we really need to be clear with the field. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of work to be done. Mm-hmm. Once we define, if we're going to say it's going to be OD&C, then there's work to be done on this doctoral education. There's definitely work to be done within the division of the academy. And as you were talking about these other organizations, to see how they can all sort of eventually align at some point in time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's what we would need to see. What you just said, Richard, should fit somewhere on page 4 and 5. We got to keep us to 2 pages, but it should fit somewhere on 4 and 5, what you just said. So if you go look, see where it fits, because I think what you said, I can point to different places, but we need to make sure your words are in there somewhere. Okay. So next person, which might be is Jill or David.
Go ahead, David, if you'd like to go.
Sure. I'm sorry that I've been a little remote. I've been trying to figure out how to get my connection solid. So I'm now solid. No, I appreciate this conversation and the questions that have been raised. I appreciate very much how Steve is pushing us to really think through hard questions. And I guess in my view, these are questions that have long needed to be addressed and answered. And so I definitely, I agree with what Richard has said. If we go down this path, there's a lot of work to do. And I think a critical choice we need to be willing to consider is whether or not there's value in doing that, right? So, and if there is, then I think the questions that Steve is inviting us to consider, we really need to embrace and think about the long haul. You know, there's a long-term horizon of work that needs to be done if we're going to truly transform and carve out a true field or profession, or however we want to characterize this, something that has an identity that's beyond a very niche way of understanding how to create change in organizations. So I guess where I land on this is that I do feel like if we, well, I guess where I land on this is I'd like to see us do that work. I'd like to see us make a real strong attempt at defining better than it's ever been. And I want to be careful when I say the word define, I think means different things. So for me, what we're really about is establishing, doing the hard work of actually laying out what are the foundations of this field, what are the key theories, what are the links between what practitioners should be doing if they are competent in the skill set that we espouse, and the conceptual foundations for that, and most importantly, that it's linked to the just burgeoning world of scholarship that has all kinds of things to say about building thriving, flourishing, vibrant organizations and communities. So I guess I have more to say about it, but I guess that's where I land.
Good. Yeah.
I might also add that I think I raised those questions in some of the early, I mean, I was late to the game, join those conversations on the doctoral education initiative. But for me, as I was just listening to and participating in those conversations, I found myself frequently saying, well, what is our end goal? Like doctoral education toward what end? And that is the question that is for me, has stimulated my desire to go down this path. Because until we have even a vague understanding of what that end is, and not an abstract philosophical end, how are we serving our students and the world in some way that matters. I think the best we'll be able to do is come up with a collection of ideas and thoughts about how to, maybe help students learn how to be better leaders and managers, but we aren't actually going to make a statement or do work that truly changes the world in some way. So I guess that's where I land.
I'm mindful that we're halfway into our meeting, and we're doing our check-in, so I'll be brief. But I will say one person I wish was part of this dialogue is one of my former advisors, Warner Burke. He cared so deeply about this topic and really was very intentional about the pedagogy of the program that we had at Columbia, but also just trying to think about what's the right way to train people who are thinking about scholarship and practice. So I don't pretend to have to try to even touch the way in which he would have tried to fill that role. But I do know that I agree with the ideology that this is really an important approach, is to have both this scholarship side, but also always thinking about the practical implications. I will say that perhaps where I come through is sort of the ideology and then the practicality. So one, I fully subscribe to this, and ideally what I would love is our division to really take a lead on what the management community is saying for quite a while, but I think now the burning platform is perhaps there, that we have to be more relevant to the world of management, or the world of management education will be obsolete, that we will no longer exist in the same way in the world in which we have AI and we have MOOCs and we have all of these different ways in which people can come to education. What do we offer above and beyond? And a big piece of it is, of course, our scholarship. But if our science is for ourselves, then what is the purpose? So we know this, but we've been talking to our own choir for quite a while. And I would love, ideally, for our division to find a way to not just move the field of change, but to show how practices, processes, education, etc., how we can blend these two worlds, because that's our foundation. The very people who started the science of change were also looking at the practice simultaneously. They happened together. It was not, as Ignacio had said, two different kinds of programs, two different worlds that don't speak to one another. So one is to bring that together ourselves in our division, but then to teach and really show and be a model for how to do that in the broader field of management. Then there's the practicality. And I'm looking at Richard, who's our big chair this year, and thinking about what can we do? And if we set out long-term goals, but we also set out what are practical near-term, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year goals to be able to do this, that's what interests me. I feel we've had lots of these conversations and I'm fully in, but I'm not really clear of what we are agreeing to do next year, the year after that, the year after that. And how do we reach out to the broader community to show, yes, we've said for a long time that management has to be relevant and to collaborate with those in the outside world. Here's how we're doing it in our division. Come to our PDWs, come to our way of working. Let's have a way for us to have a special award for this kind of work. Let's talk about how to do it. What are methodologies? What's our hub? I would just love to have our division be at the center of that discourse. That's
Awesome.
sort of my 2 cents.
If we were in a Pentecostal church, I'd be jumping up and down and I'd be speaking in tongue right now or something. I don't know. So you're right on. So
Yep.
Is there anything else we need to say as we move into, okay, so what does this mean concretely for the division? I think you've captured, I'm so glad we're recording it. The cool thing is I got to put the thing in place. They have an AI option for Zoom now that takes the whole session and will create a summary of our whole meeting in a very coherent manner. It writes it all up and puts it coherently in for us. So there's so many times where I love this, but I don't want to take the time to go back and read and type up stuff. So what you said, Jill, was really important. I'm glad that it was captured. I don't think we're going to lose it. So thank you. And I'm right on board with you. That's how I think is that we got to be aspirational, but we got to be in the future, but in today. And we got to be working today on priorities for this year. We need to be thinking of those things. So that speaks very much to me. All of you did. So I think I'm really grateful for that. What else? Did anybody have anything else to say? Or Richard, as you kind of go into this next year, I think if we're going to do what Jill was saying, we're going to need to do something at the next meeting that actually facilitates what we're talking about.
Next academy meeting?
That's what if I didn't say that, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the key thing about key things of what Jill said, the relevance, as I put there, it's also happening with OB and OT. When you look at the research being published, it's no longer relevant. It's only to each other, or it's to, in my mind, this is a gross over, generalization. The majority of it is speaking to each other, or to make sure that we sustain and maintain ACSB accreditation. Okay, and that's both as a scholar, a journal editor, and all kinds of things. So I think that's really important, and I think that is something, you know, the other divisions may be sort of talking about it, but maybe that's where we step in and own it. I think the other key thing is Jill's point about we can do some things this year, but really what this year is about is making sure it extends for the next 3 to 5 years. That, I think, if we don't do that and first and do that right, then we're going to be having this conversation exactly like we're having it right now, 5 years from now.
Yep. Yep. And I can tell you that it's not in my DNA. I can't do that. I can tell you right now, it just doesn't work for me that way. And so the good thing is we will crash and burn. I will go down in flames, pushing for us to do what you just said, or we won't. And I won't. I just can't, because I just can't. So the good thing is you got that, and we are all saying that. So I'm glad. And I think for me as a holder of the sort of the structured process by which we're going to move forward, I've got to make sure that process is collaboratively developed and concretely impactful. So that's going to be important. So with that, you look at the document, page 4 and 5 is everything you see that needs to happen for strategizing the future of the field. Is there a key word, phrase, or concept in there that you need to see in there that captures that would make you say, yes, we are going to move on that in a way that is a way I can get behind it? Is there something missing? Does there something need to be in those 2 pages? The other thing that I will pull up for you, just go ahead and look at that. Just make sure that that's
Hey, may I just ask a quick clarification, stupid question that maybe I just missed because I had to leave meetings early. But this document, who is the intended audience?
us.
So it's just a way for us to gather our collective agreement on but it's us meaning the division, us meaning the leaders of this division at this moment in time.
So I'm going to put another link in here for you, because it's another. Yeah, you're asking a good question. So I go by Lippett's favorite 3 questions. What's the purpose? Who needs to be involved? And what conversations need to take place? Right. So the first thing is, what is our purpose of this planning process, strategy process? What's the purpose and outcomes of the strategy process? So if you go to slide 13 on the link I put there, you'll see that. I can show my screen, but I don't know if you all want to keep the screen up. Just tell me to share it if you want me to. But if you go to slide 13, you'll see the purpose. And then the next is who needs to be involved. And the 15 is what conversations or what's our planning process look like. So that's 13, 14, and 15. So we need to evolve this 13, 14, 15 to now be a strategic planning process for the future of the field, as opposed to for doctoral education. And so the document is a document for all of us that are involved and care about advancing the field. All of those. And we have to define who those stakeholders would be. So we will have to start, when you look at leaders and stakeholders, we have different categories of people that can be involved in the process, but it would also be, who are those specific people we need to think about on slide 13, on slide 14, and the action steps there, or 15. So I just got to evolve that. So I'm at the place right now where I'm looking for you all to say, yes, let's move forward. We're on board. Let's evolve the strategy. Everybody has said, please, let's evolve the strategy. My goal is for you to leave today where you all say, yes, I can get behind this, because it's going to be you all who are going to be speaking at the board. You all that are going to be saying, we need to move forward, and this is how we're going to be doing it. And I need to do my job in kind of cleaning up these slides. There's a lot there, but I'll clean up and really focusing on those 3 slides, basically 13 to 16, making sure that they represent our process as the scope of this initiative is now moving to strategic planning for the future of the field. Am I answering your question, Joe? And
Yes.
are you, and in terms of who needs to be involved, I think you were saying, who is this for? Is there more that we need to say? I think on that stakeholder page, we need to be maybe more specific, because right there, I got the work kind of like these different categories. And what I find with those categories, it enables people like Warner to be involved without having to be like involved every day. But we can make sure that he's a part of our advisory group, for example, so that we don't lose his voice, or we have or other people who want to support, but they want to be on advisory, or maybe people we keep informed that might contribute. But we got to specify who. There's groups of people, types of people, categories of people, and organizations that we need to make sure fit and are engaged. So my question is, can we now move this into a strategy for the future of the field initiative?
I would just like to say, I think the answer to that, I mean, it's a yes, no question. I think the answer is yes, but are you asking that more?
You're on mute. You're on mute. You muted yourself.
I don't know how that happened. Okay. Anyway, I think the answer to that is yes. But what are you asking? Can we, as in, do we have the capacity to, or can we as a seeking for permission or agreement or support to move forward? So I guess that's I think I'd like to ask that as a clarifying question, Steve. In which way are you asking the question?
I guess one way to say is, will you individually and collectively support moving this into the scope of the strategic planning initiative for the future of the field? Will you 5 support that?
And
we need to propose it to the board, because the board approved this is a doctoral initiative. So this needs to go back to the board and say, let's shift it to the future of the field initiative.
Right. So to clarify, Steve, what you're really asking is can the board, or will the board support an expansion of the scope of this initiative?
Correct.
Which might be broken down into two different questions, which is, do we want to propose to the board that we do this? And then what would be necessary to get the buy-in of the board, which is now committee.
That's exactly the focus of the next 15 minutes.
Okay. So the real question on the table is whether or not the division would want to commit to support an initiative that's really exploring a much broader set of objectives, and how and what that support means.
Correct.
And if we can't answer those questions quickly, what would be the process for arriving at answers to those questions?
I have a related question, Steve. It's really like the focus should be to expand the scope of the initiative, or this should be treated as 2 different and complementary initiatives? Because I think that doctoral education per se has a value. And I think maybe thinking about the future of the field is like bigger, broader, and maybe the actors could be different compared to the doctoral initiative. And it might be designed and planned different. I mean, it extends the scope of the previous one, but it's a different animal.
Yep. The intention was to take the initiative to recast the scope to a strategy for the future of the field, then to pull the doctoral initiative into one of the main projects. You see there on page 5, number 1. It's to refocus the initiative, and then two, to advance to build a future of doctoral education initiative as one of the main projects.
What
And
if
so-
we took the one part about the field and made the scope a bit smaller and make it more about the future of our division, and then also looking at the future of doctoral education as part of that as well. So I see them as different, but if we are really trying to shape our division, there we keep having this dialogue about this difference between those that are coming from more of a practice lens, more of a scholarship lens, that how are we seen within the broader academy. If we sort of take that issue on, also some of the earlier dialogue around, is this more OD or is it change, that still exists. So that's a dialogue. And what if we really try to be more specific about our goals around that? And one way in which perhaps we can come to an agreement about what that's going to look like, one channel is through the people that we are educating to take over the leadership of this division, and the field inherently. But the field just seems broad, and we're not just talking about everyone that's working in change. The division is a smaller scope, but it's still a very important one. And if we really take on this division and see its potential, then it really could be a bigger player in the academy and a bigger player in shaping the field of our role in management. But I don't think that is a small task at all. And our part of our doctoral education serves that, because our doctoral students might be educated in a different way than those in other parts of the academy. And we can model what we're talking about through the way we're educating our future scholar practitioners, the future people who will lead our field, but generally the field of management, because eventually all of management has to do with change. So I really see this as sort of an inward out, but if we really get the first part right, we can have a bigger effect. But if we're still talking about, are we OD, are we change, I feel those are questions that are smaller. Let's figure out what role we want to play in the field of management, and what role doctoral education, and how we can really be a model for what we're talking about, of having rigorous and relevant work in the field.
I like that idea. I've been sitting here with great interest in these wider conversations, and also with awareness of the number of times they've been done before. I've been trying to think. A few years ago, there was a large group that worked for a long time and came to one of the academy meetings to present their results on what is OD, what is the basis of the field, many of these same questions. And I attended the session. I don't know if it was a PDW or a seminar, and there was discussion and kind of general dissatisfaction and contest with what was presented. And then I can't remember what happened after that. I don't think anything did. I think it is important to do that work, but I find myself as an individual with more energy from what Jill just said. I feel like I can get my arms around it. That if we kept the container to the division, we're talking about these same issues, but I think we'd be talking about them in a way that would be more meaningful, and would also keep an important practical focus on this issue of doctoral education, which is what attracted me to begin with. That's my day job, and I see all sorts of possibilities there and all sorts of needs. But if the container was more the division than maybe the world, I think we could make tracks. So I feel energized by Jill's suggestion. Nothing is lost. It's contained and kind of labeled in a different way. Steve, I don't know what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, last meeting, people talked about how this initiative can't be led by the division. They were basically saying that this is not a division initiative. That was a pretty adamant focus of the group last time. You can go back to the recording and kind of watch how the group talked about that. They didn't want the division to own it. They felt that there were too many stakeholder groups across various other places and organizations that needed to be involved in this. So my reaction was, well, I want the division to play a key champion leading role in this initiative as we invite other organizations and institutions to partner in being a part of this. So they need to be able to see themselves as a partner, not as that. So as you describe that, I see that what you just described is sort of a really, that I think I like the in-out notion, and that I think the division has to think about its role within the academy, within the context of a larger strategy for the field that's engaging all these different partners. So it's kind of like being in the loop. Like right now, AI. There was a summit on AI a month ago on the role of AI in the world, and it's all these different organizations came together, and they're all looking for what's happening at that, so they can look at the implications for large systems like the entire federal government, for example, is looking at what's happening at that to know what they need to be doing within the federal government in response to the AI in the world. So what I'm saying is I want my thinking of what the group was saying is they want the division to play a champion role or to play a role in contributing to the overarching future of the field, a strategy for the future of the field. I'm seeing this in and out piece being that there's this notion that the division can play a central, like in fundraising, you got the key donors that you have to get first on board in order to then to build and get a lot of people on board. So I'm seeing key players coming together in sort of like a UN space. And then the division has got to be thinking about what's its role within the division and be in touch with that to know how it's going to, what its strategy is within the academy. That's what I'm seeing. I don't know if that's helping, but that's what kind of came out of the last meeting.
Maybe there are two paths, because this audience is the division, and
Right.
maybe we talk about what we can do as a division, because I can't imagine my other division of organizational behavior saying that organizational behavior division at the academy doesn't play a role in what the doctoral education of people in OB would be. That just seems those are congruent initiatives, right? So it should have a role, and if it's not doing a great job of that, then that's a problem for the division leaders. So I think perhaps there's another path that we want to stay in a parallel conversation, but we as a division and the board of the division, this is our job, I believe, to really think through what is the role of division within the broader academy. What's our relationship with the broader academy? What impact do we want to have on the broader academy? And what impact do we want it to have on us? So how will we relate to it? But very importantly, how are we cultivating, growing, developing leadership for our future? And to me, that's the inside out. How does that shape our field going forward? Because the education of who we're bringing through the pedagogy of what this field is about and how they approach it is going to shape how we do change going forward. It shapes the field, unless our division is irrelevant. So if we don't handle our division and make our impact exciting and what we want it to be, then I don't think we're not going to be able to have any kind of impact going forward. So doctoral education is a big piece of it. I also think the work we did on this hub hive thing is progress towards that. So if we start saying we're not starting from scratch, all of these pieces are to pull together our community. How are we shaping this? What role do we have? How does this then educate others on perhaps a new way of looking at our way of working with organizations, of making an impact on leaders, etc. These are all pieces that we can do. And perhaps last time it was this hub hive, we continue to grow that. But one of the pieces of the hive or the hub is doctoral education. So let's go and hone in on that and talk about what we do. But I think for this group, keeping it at the division makes sense. Maybe there's a parallel track, and we're making sure our dialogue is consistent, but I think we maybe need to keep our scope. Or I just don't know how much we're going to be able to do in the time that we all are serving. That's the practicality piece.
Yeah. So I see kind of layers. I see a matrix, if you will, a matrix structure almost to to this type of an initiative. We got this overarching strategy for the future of the field. We've got the academy and OD&C division, and we've got doctoral education within that, and we got the strategy for the division, right? So the strategy within the division strategy and doctoral education. We've got this overarching strategy. OD&C division is a major important player in the larger piece strategy, and we can work on that in parallel. I have a passion for this. I have a passion for doctoral education on a closer level, so it's like a parallel track, like you're saying. What just emerged in this conversation is the idea: what's the strategy for the division within the academy, right? And what is that? And what's the intention of the division within that? As we're keeping our eye on what is the conversations up here with all the key organizations, because I look at, like, PSYOP and and other organizations out there. What role might they want to play in this? And this bigger question: how can we invite them in so they feel like they're a strategic partner in the future of this field? And
Right.
also business organizations and government, or like HRS, human resource solutions, and the federal government is keenly interested in stuff like this. So, for example, but that's in the United States alone. That's not in Europe, which has got its own perception of what OD&C is. And how do we invite institutions across Europe and in other places in the world into this conversation? So that's the bigger one. I have a passion for that. And I'm good with holding that space up there so that we can have a convening space. And I'm looking, I love the academy and OD&C division. So I want to keep my heart where I'm here on the doctoral education, which is one of my heart, and keep that going. And I want to help ensure that the academy is connected into this larger piece and plays an important strategic role. That's how I'm thinking. And I think the good thing is we got to wrap up, but I think hopefully the conversation today was productive enough to know that we got to talk again to kind of figure out our way forward. We didn't get to the point like how do we engage the board? How do you all? And I'm just asking you all to be the champions for making sure the division and the board are playing a key role in this larger piece, but also staying local. So local, global. So we might need to talk next time about this. And maybe over to Richard. I turn over to you since we got like a minute before we have to go.
So
Can we meet again, I guess, Richard?
Yeah, we can meet again, of course. I think this is too important. I guess I need more clarity, the global piece versus the more specific. It's really coming, when I look at this, the division it needs to go through an exercise about, how it defines the field, even the name of the division, and that really gets to its role in management. And when I say management, from the division, it's the Academy of Management. So we've been having this discussion. The doctoral initiative is also, you start off with the doctoral education. Now you have moved back in some ways, or moved toward, I shouldn't say back, but toward, okay, what is the field exactly? So you're having those conversations, and you have other organizations that you want to involve. So it's really between these established organizations, communities of practice that have developed that may become more formalized, having this definition of about what the field is.
Gotcha. So I think,
and so there's some concurrent things going on. So
so I think, so I think we meet again. I'm just looking at my students are showing up. I have a group of students who are showing up, and that's okay, because I would love for them to hear us all talking about this, because it's the master's program in OD&C. But I think, Richard, what I'm hearing is it's not the scope is changing. We have another level initiative that needs to be created, keeping the doctoral initiative here. And then the second question is, what role can the division of the OD&C play in helping to be a key strategic partner in how we do this? And we're going to have to invite others, because I could see division leaders for other organizations and people coming in and saying, okay, this is our role. This is our role. This is how we want to be a partner in the bigger one. So I think there needs to be 2 of them. And I think we got to come back. So Jill's shaking her head like, oh my God, like it's too big. So
I also have student choice. I have to go.
Yeah.
I'm
So
just moving
right.
into the next thing, but I'm listening. I've got that. I'm
Gotcha.
a mother,
I
so
was
I
just
can
making,
do both
as I
at
was
the
talking,
same time.
I'm queuing on all the nonverbals going, are we all on board? So my hope is that you're on board. I like the pathway. Let me give some thought to this and try to create some pictures that capture what we're saying. Let me get another meeting, another hour, and we're okay. We're on time. As long as we just keep plugging away, I will move towards concreteness. I promise you that. And I will move towards us doing something that fits for all of you. I promise that. I'll send an email out. We'll pick another time. Have a super rest of the day. This has been super wonderful. I've got it recorded. I'm going to stop the recording. And